Good to have you here. Thanks,
Thank you.
Stream Team. Thank you,
Welcome, Tony.
Ryan.
All right.
Hi, Blake.
Grega, thanks for coming. Came in, Ryan. Thank you guys. A lot of pearls dropped in our batting practice today. So, Tony, great to have you here.
Thanks, Dale.
You gave me some bullet points to cover with you. You want to start with the dollar? It's under
Yeah, sure.
pressure here.
Yeah, I know we've seen some real upward movement in the dollar in the last few weeks, but there are a couple of upward pressure points for the dollar. Of course, government opening is one. That's with the government open, we have more demand for dollars so that the U.S. can spend other people's money quicker. So we're going to see a lot more of a demand for the U.S. dollar from the fiscal kind of unlocking. But here's the other thing that I don't really see anybody talking about is with the Trump visit to Asia and the improvement in trade relations, there's more of a demand for dollars from that as well. So for all of the talk about the demise of the dollar and all this kind of stuff we've heard over the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years, the dollar is still the global means of transaction. And if the U.S.-China trade relationship and U.S.-Korea, U.S.-Japan, and other ones are truly unlocking, then those transactions are going to happen in dollars. So there will be more dollar demand. Are we going to see 110, 115? I seriously doubt it. We're not going to see that on the DX. Are we going to see 102, 103? Yeah, I think that's likely possible. And I think I don't see major upward opportunities there. I would just
Okay.
be careful of looking at downside here.
Okay, so do you have levels? To me, looks like Dixie could trade maybe 98, flush some people out, and then maybe dig its heels in
Yeah,
and not go to new lows.
that's exactly what we're expecting is we may see a little bit of pullback just on kind of sentiment more than anything. But I think we're looking at between 102 and 105. And then I think before the end of the year, we see a little bit of pullback there. But as those kind of the machines start moving in the US government and as the machines start moving in trade, we start to see more of an upward push in the dollar.
Okay, you also wanted to cover the yuan because of trade relations. Now, I just heard one thing about
Yeah.
this trade deal, Tony. I want your
Okay.
impression that the 1 year stay of execution that will still get rare earth metals from China, that there's this application process that other people have been going through that it takes forever. They
Mhm.
want pictures of what you're going to be using it for, which could have national defense implications. So really, is this deal really done? And is the rare earth, can you imagine China still having leverage and the Supreme Court knocking down what President Trump uses as leverage, his
Yeah.
tariffs?
I
I
mean,
mean, what could that
there will be
happen?
tariffs regardless. Let's go back to what you talked about, the rare
The
earths and
yuan?
magnets. So,
Okay.
so I was in Las Vegas last week. I spoke at this SEMA event, which is a kind of a cool car show, and a lot of aftermarket automakers are there. And they were telling me that even for auto parts, they have to go through the process of taking pictures of their factory floor, disclosing who their customers are, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the response from the manufacturers I talked to is this. They said, look, they already know who our customers are. They already know what our manufacturer, they already manufacture
They
our
already
stuff
know.
for us generally.
They know everything.
Yeah,
Anyway.
so he
Okay.
said they know this stuff already. So this is just an administrative process. So I talked about tariffs a lot there, and that process adds about 15% on the cost of those goods they're importing. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So this administrative cost, it's a non-tariff barrier, right? And nobody really knows what a non-tariff barrier is, except for about three of us who've been talking about them for about 12 years. But nobody really knows what those are. But this is a good example of one, right? It's an export control, and so my understanding is that that documentary process is being rolled back at least partially as a part of the agreement.
Okay.
Because the reality is China needs trade, and China needs trade with the US. And China has faced a pretty ugly deflationary environment for the last couple of years. Unofficially, officially, it's only been what, 6 or 9 months or something, but
Yeah.
they've seen a pretty ugly deflationary environment. They need fiscal spending domestically in order to prop up the companies, prop up real estate, and so on and so forth. So, no, when I talk about fiscal spending both in the US and in China, I'm not talking about turning on the printing press. I use that kind of in quotes. We're not just talking about creating money supply. We're actually talking about spending money. And when you spend a currency in that currency's denomination, it creates more demand for that currency. So I do expect a slight appreciation of CNY.
Okay.
If the trade discussions had not gone well, our base case was for a fairly dramatic depreciation of CNY. And that's why we believe that's why we saw so much pressure on gold, because Chinese, I say political figures, obviously Chinese government offices, companies were hedging gold, or hedging in gold, preparing for a significant deval of CNY. And then once that deval was largely done, they were going to switch back into CNY. Okay, so a lot of the buying we've seen in gold has been in China, a lot.
That's interesting.
And we've heard a number of stories from the mainland where people are trying to get money out, even 30 to $40,000. We're not talking about $500,000 or millions, where they're not given approval to take their money out of China. And this is as recent as last week. They then go to the bullion dealers, like in Shanghai. There's no gold for sale. So demand for gold has spiked still in China. So the government domestically has to convince their people that they're not going to devalue CNY. Okay. And so this is a real dilemma in China, and it's why we still are seeing upward pressure on gold prices because the demand in China is colossal. Nobody trusts the PBOC, nobody trusts the government, nobody trusts the value of the currency. So in China, the domestic pressure to see some progress on the US-China trade agreement is massive. Okay. So we hear in the news about how strong China is and how they're going to, whatever, embarrass the US. It's not the
Yeah.
case. Okay. On the ground, exporters need to export. People are losing jobs. People want to take their money out of China and so on. So the government has to convince their people that they're not going to devalue the currency, which is why I believe we're going to see a little bit of appreciation of CNY, not a lot, but a little bit. Okay. And obviously, there's that pull through of needing more CNY to pay vendors, and to distribute some largesse so that we can get some inflation in China. That's what they want. They
Yeah.
want a little bit of inflation because deflation is just embarrassing, right? And deflation leads to job loss, it leads to collapsing prices, and so on and so forth. So
So we
they're
know they're losing control if we trade back above 740, right?
yeah,
Because that would be the opposite. And that, for a long time, Tony, people have been saying that 740, 750 level. A year ago, people were afraid that China was going to let it go, right? And we were going
yeah,
to
and they
really,
would have if these trade agreements didn't go. Again, what we hear in the States is, China holds the cards and all this nonsense. It's not true at all. Xi Jinping had to come to an agreement, okay, or his economy would collapse. So now when China does a deval, they have this famous deval they did in 2015 that was just embarrassing. They always overshoot. The PBOC does not know how to communicate a devaluation. So again, they're trying to convince people that they're not going to deval, and they're going to mess that up too. Okay, they always overshoot.
okay.
And again, I've said this before, Dale, but the PBOC literally puts their policy together based partly upon numerology. Okay, and people will laugh at that, but it's true.
I don't believe, yeah, I mean, yeah, that people in different cultures have
Yep.
different belief systems.
Yep, exactly. And so this is not a transparent central bank. This is a central bank based deep in, although we have the Cultural Revolution, there's still cultural bias. There's a bureaucratic bias. Nobody wants to disappoint the senior CCP members because they'll end up falling off a building,
Hey,
right?
yeah, and I was wondering if you could get a hold of one of your contacts on the ground there, and they could shoot me a good lotto number.
Yeah, I'll be in line first, Dale. I'll be in line
All
first.
right, Tony. Anyway, I planted a seed. All
Yep.
right, so let's go to the end now, Tony, because you're saying Japan is just going to be Japan, which
Japan's
means
Japan. It's
yeah,
they're going to do what they do. They're going to depreciate their look. Japan, Korea, China are in an export competition. And how can Japan compete? Well, they can compete by installing robots and devaluing. That's how they compete. They have great products. Everybody knows that. Nobody has to be convinced of that. But they're competing with China and Korea. Korea will always devalue the won. That's their easiest tool to go to. And so, Japan has to sit in a happy middle, an unhappy middle, actually, and compete with the exported deflation from China and the currency kind of torpedoing that Korea is consistently happy to do. So Japan has to deval. We're not going to see, when I remember going to China, or sorry, in Tokyo in 2012, I used to go there every couple months. And the yen was trading at 76. I don't know if you remember this, Dale,
oh,
but
I do.
trading at 76. And then at the time, Japanese industry said, we just need a yen at 95 and we'll be fine. And then before we knew it, it was 120, and then it was at 150, right? So Japan will have to depreciate their currency. They're going to have intervention from their central bank, and they'll have a lot of kind of policies filled with new letters.
So 160 handle coming.
Yeah, at least. I mean, we may see things get out of hand, but I think we'll head there. This isn't going to happen overnight. I'm talking probably a 2 month horizon,
That's
but we definitely need to keep an eye on that.
so use this any weakness that we get here in the end. Look for your support levels. You think 152 holds, 150 holds?
Yeah, for a
What do
short
you?
time, absolutely. I think there's, again, we're going to be. Japan has to find a way to compete.
Okay.
And that's really what we're looking for is that competition between those three countries is incredibly intense, and you can't not devalue. You can't not automate. Those three are so locked in competition.
Okay. So I mean, a lot of great currency thoughts here, Tony.
Thank you.
Why don't we do a little Beverly Hillbillies analysis?
Sure.
Do you know who they were? You know the show?
Of course I do.
All right.
Dale,
Well,
I was
you're young. Everyone's younger than me, so I have
Yeah,
to
I was
ask.
born in the 70s, and after high school, Beverly Hillbillies was kind of in syndication and on repeat,
Uh,
so I
okay.
couldn't really help myself.
All
So
right.
in terms of oil, we've got WTI trading at about 61 right now. We expect it to head up to 64, 65 in the next couple of weeks. We may see it come back a little bit before the end of the year, but we do see some upward pressure on WTI, of course on Brent as well, but the price levels I sent to is focused on WTI.
Okay.
So with the government opening, with the FAA and airlines, all roaring back, we do expect upward pressure on crude, and that will, again, that will at least after Thanksgiving, I think we'll see a little bit of pressure released from there.
Okay. So you think the lows are in here?
Yeah, at least for now, I think the lows are
Okay.
in. Yeah.
Any comment on natural gas, which has been a superstar compared to WTI?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that really depends on, this Arctic blast and how many Arctic blasts we're going to have this winter. Nat gas for us is always a very short-term forecast because it's so incredibly volatile. So I think we need to wait to see what happens with these Arctic blasts over the next month, before we can really call a trend there, outside a seasonal trend.
Yeah. I don't, I just see it, that we put in a couple of higher lows and
Oh
then
yeah,
gapped
absolutely.
and yeah.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Like we're definitely going to get back to those numbers that you have from, July,
okay.
simply because of the weather. But I don't know. To be honest, I didn't look at it before this call, but I just don't really know what we're gonna get, say, after Thanksgiving. So we get that
Okay.
Arctic blast, we see temperatures go down. How many are we going to get over December? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it's also used in fertilizer because I was
Yeah.
making grain comments and people talk to me about it. And everyone's real bullish uranium and nuclear, but
Yeah.
isn't this is a bridge to
Yeah, of
nuclear?
course it is. And we also hear the administration making positive comments about coal again. And so,
Uh,
all of this is just it's a competition for feedstock, right?
yeah,
And, you know, will we have, I think if the competition was doing, say, nat gas and nuclear, that's great, right? But I think the reality is with a lot of these data center commitments, you're going to have your infrastructure upgraded. And if coal is the cheapest way to do it, and we can have an environmentally sound way of doing that, then I think we may see more coal build out. I don't know that for
well,
sure, but we may see that as a stopgap. It depends on, I think a lot of it depends on SMRs and how this, light technology in terms of nuclear can be deployed, and can it be done modularly and all this stuff.
I know Santa's looking for some coal to put in our stockings, traders' stockings, if we're wrong going into
Sadly.
year end. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
all right, so you want to comment on the gold market? You said if we had, your thesis was that if we had stayed closed, gold would have been at ridiculous, yeah, I mean at new highs, right? If
Oh
the
yeah, absolutely. I have no doubt
okay,
about that.
all right,
And again, this is a rush of Chinese political and, we'll say, in quotes, private sector assets moving into gold. We saw a little bit of relief after the agreement was made. It's climbing back up. I think there's some doubt about implementation of those agreements. And I think it's well-founded doubt because, we always meet with China. Everything's really happy for
yeah,
a few days,
days,
and then
hours,
reality hits, right? And so,
yeah,
so again, that pressure domestically in China for them to get their act together is immense. So, I mean, is there going, I don't believe there's going to be political change necessarily in China. I'm not that kind of guy, but I do know that the pressure is immense for the
gee.
party to implement these things.
Okay, I mean, we really got a great primer on China. You're one of the best analysts when you come to your views on China that
Thanks, Dale.
give us insights that we never really read about on X or see in videos of people talking about China. So, Tony, with that being said, best way for people to get involved with you and contact you.
Sure,
Um,
thanks.
yeah,
Yeah, on X, my handle is at Tony Nash Nerd.
there it is.
We do market forecasts at Complete Intelligence, so you see that there. You can sign up for free. We give global macro and SGX Singapore stocks and major currency pairs for free at Complete Intel. So sign up there for free, and then we have monthly subscriptions with more interesting pairs.
Okay, Tony, I always enjoy having a conversation
Thank
with
you,
you
guys.
every quarter. So we'll be talking next year, buddy. I'm
Thank
sure
you, sir.
I think it's going to be a wild ride between here and New Year's, don't
Oh
you?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
It'll be fun.
Well, we have gray hair. We could handle it.
I hope so.
All right,
Thanks, Dale.
Tony.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Tony Nash, everybody, my trading warrior brother. Find him at on X at Tony Nash Nerd. Go check out his website, and he has some. Here you go, free.
That's right. All you have to do is
There it is.
register, no credit card, nothing, just get in there for free and you get a bunch of free info.
Okay, so thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Dale.
Everybody, good hunting the rest of the day. Remember, don't just count your pips, count your blessings, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good turnaround Tuesday, everyone. See you, Tony.
See you.
Hey traders, this is Blake Morrow with ForexAnalytix. Thanks for stopping by our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like these videos, share them, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of the content that we provide here for free. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next video.